Yo, what is good, Vibers? Welcome to this beginner's guide on Zeph. My goal for this video is to take you from no knowledge of this hunter to being able to play him at somewhat of a decent level your very first time. And we're going to do that by looking at his abilities and their synergy with each other, some item options, as well as some powers. Now, Zeph is just like a really fun archetype because he's basically like an offensive mage healer. Like if you ever dreamed of playing Ezreal's support like me or have trolled people by doing so, this is your guy. He's basically Link Ezreal support. And with the way his kit is sort of set up, you're really encouraged to like sort of pump offensively, and that's going to do a lot to enable you to heal more through the extra charges we're getting from Mending Breeze from our passive. So there's kind of a lot going on in these tooltips when you look at Windslinger and Gale Force. So we're going to start with Windslinger, but these two are basically connected, and I'm going to basically tell you exactly what's happening here. So Windslinger is our LMB, and if we look, we can sort of charge it up, and we can also press it instantly. So if we read the tooltip, fire a gust of wind, dealing some base damage scaled by our ability power. Hold until flashing to fire a faster, larger gust that deals more damage, travels further, and passes through enemies. Holding for too long lowers the damage, applies Gale Force passive, and grants you 20 mana on hit. So basically what this is telling us to do is see this very first part of the charge bar on our LMB. That's the sort of the sweet spot. Like right after that fills is when we get this nice, see this nice juicy LMB right here? It's like the big green. And if we do it to strike, see how it like passes through her and it's going to put this green mark on her head? That's basically the most powerful version of our Windslinger. And we can see by hitting it quickly, we can still get some decent DPS, and it is still going to give us our Gale Force mark on our passive, which we're about to talk about. But holding it down for this split second basically gives us this pen effect. See how it now passes through her versus if I'm just shooting it this way, it doesn't. And also if we hold it too long, so if we go all the way to the top, it's also going to be just essentially a weaker form of that first version. So see it doing 169, but if I shoot it quicker, 206, right? And basically our LMB's damage is going to always be higher if they have the mark on their head. And so let's just jump right over to Gale Force, which is essentially this mark. So our passive is Gale Force. If we read it, Windslinger, which is our LMB we were just looking at, applies and refreshes Gale Force, which amplifies additional Windslinger, which is our LMB we were just looking at, hits and can be detonated by other damaging abilities. So basically every time I LMB, whether it's a short one, a good one, or like an overcharged one, it's always going to apply this mark. And if we look, the mark probably lasts like 6 seconds or so, and anytime we hit with LMB, it'll refresh it. But if you watch, I'm gonna do the good charge one, so just one of these, and I'm gonna hit her, and it's gonna do less damage. And as soon as the mark's on her, it's gonna do more damage. So 152, 206. So now it'll continue to do 206, and every time I hit with it, it's gonna refresh that green leaf. So we can get the green leaf with any version, and any version is going to do more damage with the green leaf on. So we can see just tapping at 130 and then 169, and it'll keep refreshing it at 169 if we just do the tap. And then same thing with the overcharge one, which in general, you don't really want to do this one, guys. This is basically like, you know, if you mess it up, you'll be doing this one, but this is the same damage. You'll notice this is the same damage as tapping it. So it's basically, it's less powerful than the perfect charge version, but it passes through still. So it's basically somewhere in between tapping it like this and doing the good charge. But you can see if you do the good charge, not only does it do more damage, you also can shoot more of them, right? Because you're just charging it for like a half second. So I think one of the really important mechanics on Zeph to get used to is just this timing in combat and just getting used to kind of getting the instant, like right at the first part of the green, the big green one, just because that's going to give you not only the most damage, it's also going to pen. Meaning like penetrate through multiple enemies so that if multiple are lined up, you can be getting this damage and this mark on like multiple people. And that is important because our other abilities will detonate the mark, which is this second part of Gale Force that we just read. So basically our other abilities that can detonate the mark are our grenade and our ult, Second Wind. And so basically the only two abilities we have that can detonate this mark are our grenade Q, Vortex Charm, and our ult, our Second Wind. And so basically, if we have targets marked by our Gale Force with that little leaf on them, with the leaf effect around them, both our Q and our R are going to do more damage. And if we read this, our R is in fact going to do double damage, and it's also going to reset the mark. And so if we check out the difference, our grenade by itself does 239. Our grenade with a mark does 401. See, and see how it was like the gold, like crit? Our ult by itself does 239. Our ult marked 509. So basically, you almost always want to try to have targets sort of pre-marked with your LMB before landing your ult or your Q. And so basically getting in the rhythm of doing this on Zeph and sort of like this constant sort of oppressive LMB pressure you can put out, not only is it going to be doing good damage, especially if you're building right, it's also going to be marking everything, so your grenade and your ult are going to do much more damage. And on top of all that, we have this bottom part of our Gale Force passive. Zeph has an extremely strong passive, and this basically is what makes his whole kit, so it's really important to be aware of these things and sort of like playing around them. Hitting a target affected by Gale Force, which is this passive leaf mark we've been talking about, with Windslinger LMB, reduces Mending Breeze RMB charge duration by 1 second. Detonating Gale Force refreshes 1 charge of Mending Breeze. So let's use that to hop over to Mending Breeze, and then we'll talk more about the grenade and the ult that we just looked at. But because of how sort of intricately tied that mark detonation is, I wanted to show you guys how these are detonating the mark. So our RMB is our main heal, and it's a super strong, easy heal because it's just point and click. So we can do it to ourselves, and if we look at the tooltip here, can be self-targeted at 50% potency. So if you ever do it on yourself, know that it's always going to be sort of half the value than if you're healing another target. Launch a Mending Breeze at a target ally, healing allies it passes through for X amount of health. Can be self-targeted at a 50% potency, has multiple charges increasing with ability level. So we can see the level 2 of Mending Breeze is going to give us an additional charge. So at level 1, this will be 1 charge base, but as soon as we get it to level 2, we're going to have 3 charges of it. And we'll talk about ability order in a minute because I think it's important on Zeph, but I generally try to take level 2 Mending Breeze like at level 4. Like, you know, you get your first level and everything, and then kind of the next point I'm spending before I get my ult is getting an extra charge in here. And the reason that is because that really lets us lean more into our passive and be more of this like super offensive aggro healer, because basically the more offensive we are with our LMB and trying to get these Gale Force marks, the more we are going to be refreshing our heal. This sort of like really strong point and click targeted heal we can do. Every time we hit Windslinger LMB, it's going to be reducing the charge durations by a second. So every LMB, watch, if I use these charges, every successful LMB hit, see how I'm getting a second back on the cooldown with every one? And even stronger than that, if I actually detonate the mark, I'm going to get a full charge back. Look at that. So as soon as you blow up the mark with either your grenade or your second wind, you get an instant full bar of your Mending Breeze. So as you're being super offensive, it's really important to basically be consuming these charges so you're building them back up. So constantly be looking to nearby allies to heal. And the other really important mechanic about Mending Breeze you want to keep in mind is this second line right here, heal passes through allies. So just like the same way your LMB can pen in a line, this like pens in a line for allies. So if I have a homie here at this spawn bot circle, and then I have another homie over here at refresh, if I right click Mending Breeze this guy, the heal will pass through this person and heal both of them. So you always want to be looking when you're team healing. And so that goes for like your whole team. So if you have 1, 2, 3 lined up like this and you hit the furthest person with this RMB, it's going to heal all 3 of them. And so you're constantly looking on Zeph. Like I really like Zeph for the geometry. You're constantly looking for heal geometry on your team. And you're also constantly looking for like line geometry on the other team to like pen through with your LMB. Another thing that's really important to keep in mind with Mending Breeze, guys, is if you see anti-heal on your teammates, this is going to do literally nothing, 0. It will just waste a charge and waste mana. And you can see if you look at the detailed version of the Vive Brew tooltip, players can cleanse anti-heal on themselves by drinking a Vive Brew, but we cannot cleanse it with our Mending Breeze. And so if you see an ally that is anti-healed, you're going to want to wait for that anti-heal to fall off before you pump any Mending Breeze charges, because they're literally going to be useless with that anti-heal up. I remember the very first time I was playing Zeph in Arena, my Firefox was like 1 HP anti-healed, and I spammed all 3 charges on him and they did nothing, and he just like spam question mark pinged me, and I was like, oh. All right, so before we jump to the grenade and the ult, let's take a look at the shift real quick, which we haven't really mentioned. So Cyclone dash, this is like a really cool dash because it's basically a team dash. And you can use it 2 ways. Basically, you can use it as a self dash, and most of the time, if you're using it as a self dash, I think you want to use the short version. So if we read this, press to perform a short dash, hold to summon a Cyclone, release to dash a long distance, bringing allies with you and giving them some glider fuel. That's something to keep in mind that's not super obvious in the initial tooltip, is you can give allies glider fuel if you catch them in the big NATO. cooldown partially refunded on tap cast. So just like the way Ghost's shift combat slide will vary its cooldown based on how far you go, you can actually tap cast this shift, and especially once you get this second point in here to get the -2 on the cooldown, you can actually get like a really short dash cooldown. And this is like basically this is your combat dash. So while stuff's going down in combat and you want to be like, you know, like dodging stuff, you can basically use this, and we can see we have it up basically like every 3 seconds as long as we're tapping it. And the key to this is you want to be in the air when you tap it, because we can see if we do it on the ground, we're not like leveraging any of the momentum and we don't go very far. But we can see it's like extremely short cooldown if we do tap it. And so if we jump and tap it, we can like sort of ride that momentum a lot further and get like a pretty high value like combat dash out of, you know, basically like a 4-second cooldown. So then we can also hold it, and we can see that little charge bar that started above me. As soon as you hold it down, it charges up, and as soon as that turns blue, you now have this full NATO. And this will now basically see this like graphic, the visual of this green. That's basically like the radius. Sometimes it's like hard to tell if allies are in range or not. This like sort of like cyclone green, not the leaves, but like this cyclone green is basically like who's in range of getting flung here. And it's not going to fling enemies, but you're going to basically be able to like fling all your allies with you. And this is like one of the funnest sort of like team mechanics on Zeph to get good at, is like sort of like, you know, pocketing your teammates a little bit and sort of like trying to be with them. So like whoever's kind of last in the pack, you can like catch them up, you know, with a big boost. And another way this is extremely good is in combat. Like if someone on your team gets like a really good engage and your backline's like not there to follow up, like you can basically get your whole backline there, you know, in like a split second to like follow up on a good engage if like the rest of your team is out of range from whoever made that engage. So Cyclone Dash just has like, it really has a ton of potential use cases and like ways you could use it. And it's going to feel like wonky at first. And that's something like with Zeph, guys, that I think is important to kind of like point out, is like, he's going to feel a little like uncomfortable at first. Like when I first started playing him, it's like something just feels like a little, he feels a little clunky, I guess is the best way to describe it. But sort of the more you get used to using the dash in this way, we're realizing you can use it as a short combat dash, and then also like using it with teammates to get the big like team dashes either in and out. Also incredibly good for running away, right? We talked about using it for going in, but if your team is, you know, trying to bail, also extremely good at, you know, kind of getting people out of the mess. And like we were talking about, if you are able to use it in a situation where homies need glider gas to keep going, also get that little nice bonus as well. The other thing I might have forgot to mention on dash is you can actually throw wisps with it. So in a situation where we are in an early team fight and we are getting shift early, we can use that to basically move allied wisps, like if they get down, like out of the fight, and try to get like a res real quick. And then for like the little bit of Schmovement tech with Zeph, well, actually with the bunny hop, there's like kind of a lot of Schmovement tech. So we'll talk about just the gliders first. If you do the short dash, you can catch it into a glide, and you can do this like over normal ground to get like pretty good glider distance out of just a really short dash cooldown, and you can get some good verticality with the hop too. And so that's a good way for just like normal Zeph like ground traversal, is basically, so the sooner you kind of catch the momentum of this in your glide, the faster that initial glide speed is going to be. You're basically trying to catch the momentum of your shift right into your glide, and that same exact idea can also be used with like the big team glide. And if you're trying to go like zoom for whatever reason, you can even do this solo, because if you catch this one in the glide, it's going to give you that nice big kind of early boost on it. All right, so the other potentially cooler part of the Schmovement tech on Zeph is the bunny hopping. And so this was actually figured out by our boy Paz. If you don't know Paz yet, awesome SUPERVIVE content creator, been playing for a long time. And like one day shortly after the NDA release, like a few months ago, I tuned into his stream, and he was basically doing this. And I'm probably doing it terribly, but basically what you're trying to do, I'll link his short. He has a short where he shows how to do it, and it's him doing it really good. I'm not that practiced on it. There we go. That's a little better. But basically, check out his short for like, you know, just see him doing it. But basically what he says in there is like, all you're doing is auto attacking, like that timing on the LMB we talked about to get the nice juicy green one. You're doing that same timing, except you're basically moving the opposite direction that you're shooting. And every time you shoot it, if you jump, you basically get that, you can sort of carry the momentum of that shot like into your movement. And so you can actually like get faster movement than running, like traveling like this with Zeph. And not only that, you can, if like same thing with like, pretend you're playing like Rocket Jumper or Bishop, and like people are chasing you, Like Zeph can basically do the same thing with his B-hop. Like he can be super annoying, like pumping a lot of damage, continuously like kiting backward with this B-hop. And not only that, the whole time he's doing it, he's recharging his heal through that part of his passive, right? And he's doing extra damage from the mark, and he's constantly threatening the nade ult destruction that we're about to get to. I just remember like laughing so hard because I tuned into his stream and his team's like fighting and he's just like doing this across the map, like not even paying attention. He was like so excited about the bunny hop on Zeph, which it's like pretty cool tech. So shout out Paz, check him out. Yeah, it seems like the sooner you kind of shoot it when you're on your way up in the air, the further kind of distance you can get out of it. It's looking a little better now. I don't really mess with this much. Yeah, see how like right when you jump, if you let it go like right as you're jumping, seems to kind of give you the most juice backward. And something we didn't even look at yet is if we combine the B-hopping with that short dash, we can get even more value out of it. And so combining the short dash with the B-hop, when you're at your peak there, is going to just give you like kind of crazy style movement and that ability to kind of like be the super annoying Zeph that never gets caught, not like that, never gets caught and is still like pumping damage the whole time, right? All right, so finally getting back to Zeph's Q, his grenade Vortex charm. Throw a charm that pulls enemies in, stuns enemies that collide with each other. So if we look at the advanced tooltip, throw a charm at a target location. After a short delay, it detonates for damage scaling off your ability power, pulls enemy towards its center, grounds, and slows them. So grounding in this game, guys, basically removes a character's ability to dash. So it can be extremely powerful in certain situations, basically not allowing other hunters to use their left shift to get out of certain situations if you are able to catch them in that ground. And it's a circular ability and pulls enemies towards its center. So if two targets are pulled into the center and collide, they take extra damage and are stunned. So we can see right here, if I kind of throw it to the side of Shrike, it like pulls her in that direction. So if there was another person here, like right there, and they got pulled together, not only would they take that initial damage, they'd take the extra damage and get stunned. And we can see the initial stun duration is 0.5 seconds, but if we take this third upgrade, it's going to give us 0.3 seconds, so almost a full second stun. And we can see it's pretty big damage even with no item scaling our ability power, you know, 318 on hit, 159 from the stun. And the thing to keep in mind when casting this, guys, is it's like you can hold Q. It feels a little different than some abilities where it doesn't go insta. So if you press it and hold Q, you can like pre-do it, and it'll actually cast on release. Rather than casting, like if you press your R, like your R just goes on press, right? But this is actually like on release. So the cast might feel a little wonky at first, that's why. But the intent is to give you a little more control sort of on where you can throw it and where that stun's going to happen. And the other thing about it is like it'll get blocked by terrain. It's not just like, it doesn't just instantly go through stuff. So see if like the red right here, that means it's basically going to bounce off this pillar if I try to throw it there. See? So I'm not going to get, so keep an eye out. That's like an important thing to kind of keep an eye out when you're using it. Try and use it around terrain. Make sure you're going to be able to like get it over, you know, in general, just basically keep an eye on that red line to make sure you're going to be able to actually like get it over the terrain you're trying to throw it. And basically, like we were talking about with the LMB, you almost always want to try to hit an enemy first with any version of your LMB, ideally the big juicy one that we're doing here. And if you do that, they'll have the green leaf on their head, and with the green leaf, the grenade's going to do much more damage. And so like in a team fight or where there's like multiple targets, you're trying to basically like pen through everything real quick with a couple LMBs and look for that nice juicy nade, either when a really good time to do it is when enemies are like coming at you or retreating away. It's easy to kind of like, if people are going to be forced into a choke, like let's say there's walls here and the team needs to go this way, like throwing that grenade where they're coming in or where they're going out. Especially after you've been just like cleaving them real quick with this, it's going to do big damage. And if you get multiple people, it's going to pull them together. So basically what you want to do at that point is your grenade detonates your LMB, right? So we throw it. See how like the mark just went off of her after it's over? So now if I follow that with an ult, it's not going to be the super empowered ult. So our ult refreshes the Gale Force passive, but it also does double damage if they're already affected with Gale Force. So basically our ultra juicy combo, if we get the nade first, is you want to weave an LMB. So you have the LMB up, you nade, you weave the LMB basically right before you ult, because you want to get that Gale Force charge back on them. But potentially an even stronger option is to hit your ult right before you grenade, because your ult refreshes the mark. So to do that version, we're still throwing our nade first, but we're basically trying to time our ult to hit right before the nade. So I messed it up there. You basically want the ult to hit like immediately before the nade snaps. So like that. And that's basically going to give you like max damage on the combo, because the fact that this resets the mark and this doesn't. So if the ult hits first, you get the double damage from the Gale Force mark, and then you also get it reset, so the grenade then consumes it immediately after. So we kind of looked at it a bunch already with the passive and then with the grenade, but our ultimate is going to be Second Wind. Fire a long-range wind blast that heals allies and knocks back enemies. Struck allied wisps begin to resurrect. So if we look at the advanced tooltip, fire a large, fast, wide wind blast. Any allies it passes through are healed, and enemies take damage scaling with our ability power and are knocked back. Applies restoration to allied wisps, which passively resurrects them until an enemy stomps them, also pierces terrain. And we remember with everything we were just talking about with the grenade, hitting Second Wind on an enemy affected by our passive Gale Force, which is the leaf we've been talking about, will cause it to do double damage and will refresh our Gale Force mark, allowing us to instantly pop it again with the grenade, like we were just talking about. So this restoration effect is basically the equivalent of like a Guardian Angel. So if you've used the Guardian Angel power, like basically where when you run over allied wisps, they start to like resurrect. That same exact effect you can get out of your ult from like a long range. We check out the range on this baby. It's huge. So if we're in like a split fight and an ally is like way over here and you can't get to them and they're in a bush, even just using this just for that, just for the resurrect on like the split ally that could like potentially come back as a wisp in a bush while the rest of the team's fighting over here. Like that's like an example of like sort of a niche use case for Second Wind. But in general, it's just like, it's literally Ezreal ult with a team like heal attached. So you get this huge kind of like cone damage, and it has a knockback as well. So you get the cone like AoE knockback, and then you also get the heal on allies, and then it does the resurrect on ally wisps. So just like a very strong sort of like, I mean, it's useful in a ton of different situations, but it's great for zoning. It's great for peeling. Like if people are on top of you, the knockback, like getting them off you is really strong. It's really good for following up and engage. It's really good for like if enemies are like running away over the abyss and you can like catch a spike. And it's also really, really strong in combination with the grenade like we were just talking about. And so kind of just like show you guys again, the two ways you could do the combo for max damage is if you had a mark on them already and you throw a nade, you could basically weave an auto to get that mark back up before you ult. And then you could do like the little more timing based one that's a little harder to pull off, but is going to kind of have like more burst. And that's basically where you ult them right before the grenade snap. So we have them marked, we throw the nade, and right before the snap, we try to ult. Having the ult deal double damage from Gale Force, and then the fact that it resets the mark, so the grenade snap that follows right after it consumes the mark, and we basically get max damage out of the QR combo. All right, let's quickly take a look at like ability order, which I think is like sort of important on Zeph. You're going to notice like he doesn't feel like a real hunter until you're level 3. Like without these 3 abilities, he feels like extremely weak. And so I would say Zeph has like a very poor level 1. You're really going to want to try to get level 3 before you fight. So in most cases, like in most instances on most hunters, I take shift level 1 because it just feels terrible not being able to move and get around. But on certain instances on Zeph, it can make sense to go Q level 1. And this is basically like the more aggressive version. Like imagine you're landing on a camp with an enemy team landing on that same camp, or an enemy team landing on a nearby camp, and you're trying to rush those creeps down to get level 2 and push. Q is like a really good option there because you can basically use it to bomb the creeps and make sure you guys secure those that very first camp and get level 2. And then you're also going to have it up for the team fight that follows right after that. And in that scenario, if we do get level 2 and we're looking to team fight, sometimes I will go Q heal. And it feels really bad to not have shift, guys. I'm not going to lie. And so it's hard for me to ever recommend not picking up shift at level 1 or 2. But in this hyper aggressive Zeph scenario, potentially the most value you can bring to your team is the power of this early heal, combined with the fact that you have guaranteed resets on it by hitting your LMB, combined with the power and crowd control of this grenade, especially early on, especially if like teams are grouped and you can hit multiple targets. So a level 1 grenade followed by a level 2 Mending Breeze, if it's like spicy team fight, can be the play basically if you're confident in not having a dash. If you can know that you can like move and live without having a dash, do that. If you don't think you can do that, go shift level 2, heal level 3. So just wait till you guys secure a kill or get another creep camp. Then you can support your allies with heal, but that'll at least make sure you don't die with a Cyclone dash. So honestly, if you're landing on a creep camper in most situations, Q is going to be really strong because it's going to basically guarantee you that creep camp so you can get level 2. So my go-to basically is Q level 1, left shift level 2, R&B level 3. And if it's a spicy team fight like we were just talking about, and I think I need R&B more than the dash, I'll just do Q, R&B, then left shift. But because of how strong this is of just deleting that first creep camp and the fact that that should be able to like instantly get you 2, like the only reason you wouldn't take Q level 1 is if you're not going to get that very first creep camp kill for whatever reason. So now we're level 3, we have 1 point and everything, right? And now we're like a real hunter and we can actually do stuff and we can like work our combo. So snagging this real quick at level 4, in my opinion, feels really good because that basically lets you like leverage the full potential of this bottom part of the passive, where every time you're hitting an LMB, you get 1 second off, and every time you consume the mark, you get a full charge back. So having that extra charge basically gives you that much more like, cooldown reduction to work with, and really like leaning into that offensive healer playstyle where we're blasting with LMB, and that's enabling us to heal more with R&B because of the fact that it's giving us charges back. And every time we get a successful big damage spell, like a grenade or like an ult, it's going to give us a full charge back from consuming the mark, right? And so Zeph is just so cool with the fact that you're playing like offensive mage and you're like basically healing more. The more successful you are offensively, the better you're going to be able to heal because the more Mending Breeze charges you're getting back. And then level 5, obviously we're taking Second Wind as the ult. And then at level 6, basically if you take this level 2 shift at level 6, that's going to give you the ability to have this really fast combat dash. So I think that's worth, you could rush to level 3 grenade there if you wanted, but I really like basically having this be on such a short cooldown to where you can do it like every couple seconds, the short version. So then as far as what ability we're taking super to level 3, again, this is like a gameplay decision most of the time, but if we compare Zeph's options, his grenade option is very strong. It's basically going to take our cooldown from 12 seconds to 9 seconds, and that's before any extra ability cooldown reduction from items or anything. And then it's also going to add 0.3 seconds on the stun duration. So it's going to take the stun duration from half a second and get it closer to like a full second. So it's going to be 0.8 instead of 0.5. And that combined with the reduced cooldown is really just going to like boost the power of our grenade and let us use it more often to try to consume our Gale Force procs that we're getting from so much LMBs. Zeph does have other cool options, guys. If you're wanting to lean more into like the healer support side of things, you can go level 3 Mending Breeze, and this is going to make it so anytime you R&B your allies, they're going to get a speed boost from it. And so if you have like multiple allies in a row, like we were talking about, and you Healing Breeze the furthest one, the heal passes through everyone, and that's going to give everyone this little speed boost. So if you have another really good time to do this is if you have like a really aggressive team that relies on movement speed to like run people down, like Kingpin and Shiv and whoever else that's like really trying to like close the gap and be on the hunt. That's like another one you could take situationally based on team comp, basically to give your team this speed boost as you're healing them. And then shift is a similar thing where it could be like really fun or good situationally if you're playing a lot over Abyss. So especially like if a game's going deep and you haven't dropped your 3rd point into Vortex charm yet, and it's looking like the final circles are going to be like out over a lot of Abyss, it could be really cool to take your level 3 shift, and that's actually going to give you the ability to spawn wind rings behind you as you use your big tornado. And so just like a really cool, like fun mechanic you can use in late game to do crazy stuff. And a lot of hunters have like crazy momentum they can get through wind rings with like especially their dashes, like Celeste and some other champions can get like some really crazy momentum out of wind rings. So just like another cool like situational play you could make if there's a lot of Abyss endgame and you're wanting to like spice things up and you're not able to land that grenade as much. The other thing I forgot to mention about the grenade that's important is like you can't do it over Abyss. So you're literally just going to airball if it goes off the ledge or if it hits Abyss. And so not very good over the Abyss. So again, kind of another good reason why this level 3 Cyclone might be the play if the end map is looking like it's going to be over a lot of Abyss. Maybe might not have as many opportunities to even land Vortex charms because you're way out here. All right, so now let's take a look at some build options. I think Mana Blade, Tech Blade, just as like a base setup, is going to be extremely strong for Zeph. Because this is going to basically give you like the infinite mana you need to be continuously using all your abilities through Mana Blade, and then Tech Blade is just going to give you ability haste. And ability haste on Zeph is like extra important because you only have 2 abilities that proc your mark, and that's your grenade and your R. And so to really get the value out of your passive, you want like as low of cooldown reduction as you can get on both those abilities, so you can get more of those like devastating combos through like that. So once you're looking at upgrading your mana blade, there's basically like a support option and an offensive option that I would recommend. So the support option would be Bubble Blade, and this is gonna just I really like Bubble Blade on general in Zeph because I'm a big fan of shields and the value they sort of like add to gameplay. But if you take the Bubble Blade upgrade, it's going to make it so anytime you use your R&B, it's going to give a 25% shield as well. And we can see heals apply a shield equal to 25% of the actual heal value. So if I'm doing it on myself at full health, it's doing nothing. But if I take some damage and actually like, proc a heal on myself, it's going to give me a shield equal to 25% of whatever I just healed. It's not as impressive when you're healing yourself because you have the 50% reduced potency on Mending Breeze, right? But it's still a decent shielding value. I don't know if we can see the exact value of the shield here. It's going to be 25% of whatever this heal number is. So 25% to 176. Not crazy, but not nothing. And basically because of the volume of these Mending Breeze heals we're going to be getting, like on teammates, especially if we're successfully hitting our LMB, right? Like all the stuff we've been talking about, if we're successfully getting the resets on this, then that's going to give us like, that's where we start to see the real value of the shields, right? Because every single one of these we're throwing out now has 25% juice under it with the Bubble Blade. And then basically the offensive option I would recommend if you're wanting to lean more into like DPS Zeph and just cranking damage while still getting good heals through, you're just going to want to go for more ability power. And so Rampage is only good if you're consistently hitting like a ton. So if you're absolutely popping off and you're connecting your LMB a lot, you need to be hitting it once every 3 seconds. And once you do that 10 times, you'll get this bonus AP. But that's hard to sort of do a lot of the times, especially when you're trying to play more of a support champion. So I really like Mind Blade. So Mind Blade as the offensive option, Bubble Blade as the defensive option for Mana Blade feels really good on Zeph in my opinion. Basically what this is going to do is whenever you connect your abilities, after you connect 10 of them, it's going to transform into Apotheosis, and that's going to give you AP equal to a percentage of your max mana. Okay, so once we transform it, it becomes Apotheosis, and now we're getting basically 16 extra ability power out of it all the time. So not only do we have a much bigger max mana pool, I think we went from like around 300 up to like 475. We also are getting 16 ability power from this like scaling off of our max mana all the time. And the fact that Apotheosis gave us max mana on the way up basically makes that number a little bigger. And so now we're getting 196 ability power on top of this like strong mana blade basically. So for our tech blade options, we basically have a similar thing. And so I think there's a really good case to use this power user if your team is going to be doing vaults. So we can see up to 2 bonus stacks. So if you think your team is going to be cracking at least 2 vaults throughout the game, like especially if you're doing like a really early level 1 vault. And the other really strong thing with power user guys is if you are looking for that early vault, which I highly recommend a lot of times if you're dropping gold, like that gold's in a vault if you win that early fight. If you take that very first level 1 quest for vaults, everyone on your team is going to get an XP book. And if you trade those XP books to 2 people and they eat 2 of the books each, you can get 2 people on your team to level 5 in day 1 when the soft level cap is 4. And so if you're going with that early vault strategy to get 2 people to level 5, and that lets them unlock their ultimates, and that gives you advantage in those day 1, day night fights against other teams that haven't PvP'd yet. And so if you're going for more of like an early vault strategy like that, I think power user becomes extremely strong because your odds of getting another vault after that are really good as well. And so you can use that slight level advantage with your ults to try to win early PvP fights and sort of steamroll from there. And sort of the inherent cooldown reduction we are going to get on power user, especially with those 2 extra stacks, which is going to be equal to 30%, the 10% base plus the 10% for each stack. An extra 30% CDR is just very strong outright. So basically, if we're not doing the vault strategy, we sort of have an offensive option and a defensive option of Tech Blade. And so Amplifier we can use to get sort of crazy cooldown reduction on things like our heal, if that's the only ability we're sort of spamming. So the way this works is we get 5% base CDR, but it'll stack up to 10 times as long as we're using the same ability. So let's imagine I take Amplifier and I'm just like pumping my LMB heals. I'm healing my team and I'm getting them refreshed by hitting my good LMBs, right? And that's like the main thing I'm doing. Every time I'm using LMB, I'm getting more of a CDR on it. And we can see that stacking over here. It's at 5. And so the more I use it up to 10, it's going to get more and more reduced cooldown reduction. So look, with our amplifier, it's basically on a crazy short cooldown once our amplifier is channeled to 10, right? And so this is going to let you heal without needing to land these LMBs. These LMBs are giving you that cooldown reduction inherent, right? The reason to go Amplifier is if you're having a hard time landing the LMBs, or if that's not really the Zeph playstyle you're wanting to lean into. If you're like wanting to be back supporting a little more, like casting a bunch of heals and them having just really short cooldowns on their own, I think Amplifier can be a good look. However, I would say because we are already getting so much cooldown reduction through our passive and the way this LMB, basically every time we have the Gale markup, right? Every successful LMB after that gives us a second off the cooldown, and then every time we proc the mark with our grenade or our ult, it gives us a full charge back. And so because of that really strong inherent CDR that's already there, I think a really cool option for Zeph for Tech Blade is Interweaver. And basically that's also because of how often he can use his abilities. So with Interweaver, any abilities we use empower our LMB to launch this little extra Seeker Missile. Because we have so many charges of our heal, every heal we do adds that little bubble, right? Anytime if we're B hopping and we do our little dash with it, anytime we do our little 3-second combat dash, that adds the little LMB bubble, right? Anytime we throw the grenade, that's going to add the little Interweaver bubble, and every time we ult, it's going to do it. And basically just because of like how often we can do the combat dash, like literally every 3 seconds, combined with how often we're healing and the fact that those cooldowns are getting recharged by successfully hitting our LMB, it just gives us like a ton of value out of this abilities proccing extra damage on our LMB because of the amount of abilities we're weaving in between each LMB and how those are literally tied together trying to proc this Gale Fort passive, right? So in summary, guys, I think the best offensive Zeph build is going to be Apotheosis with Interweaver. And that's going to give you the extra mana, the extra ability power off of that mana, combined with this extra damage every time you use an ability, which you're doing a ton of with your combat dash and your heal. And all that's feeding into the marks with Gale Force. For more of like a support defensive option, I really like Bubble Blade with Power User if you're going to be doing vaults. If your team's not going to be doing vaults, then Amplifier, I think, is strong. But after kind of looking at them, Power User is basically going to give you 30% cooldown reduction, which is essentially the equivalent of stacking this 6 times, except it's going to do it to all your abilities, and you're not going to have to worry about this like idea of like casting something in a row. Because like with this, if we're only casting our heal, as soon as we cast like our shift to have to dash or something, it's going to take all the stacks away. So now we're back down to 5%. So I basically think Power User is the play if you're doing vaults. If you're not doing vaults, then look to Amplifier if you're trying to work more of this like more like support style of Zeph versus the offensive pump Zeph. And I will say, guys, I think overall the offensive version of Zeph is going to be more powerful and add more value to your team, because the more offensive you are with this character, literally the more you're going to be able to heal. The more you can successfully hit this LMB, the more you will be able to heal not only yourself, but also your team. And that's going to give you more marks. And the more you detonate those marks with grenades and ults, those are going to give you instant full charges of your heal back. So basically, the more offensive you're being and the more kind of pressure you're putting out with your abilities, literally the more you're going to be able to heal. And building something like Apotheosis, like this extra ability power, also scales our heal too, right? So we're not getting the shield, but we're getting extra damage on all of our stuff combined with extra ability power under our Mending Breeze and all the extra value of that like free Interweaver damage we were talking about, because of the fact that if we are healing a ton from getting all this CDR from hitting this LMB, now every single time we do is going to give us that extra Interweaver blast. So I think incredibly strong Zeph combo is going to be Apotheosis Interweaver. And I think even just doing this, like literally switching Apotheosis for Bubble Blade and keeping Interweaver, is going to be like a really strong hybrid look, where this is like probably my personal favorite Zeph build to play, because you're getting like big value of the shield, so you still have like huge support value for your team, but you're not really losing much. All you're losing from Apotheosis is that bonus mana and the extra 16 ability power, right? And so we're trading that extra edge on all of our damage and that little bit up on our heal for this extra 25% shielding value we can bring to our teammates. So I think like a really strong hybrid build that's going to cover like all your bases is going to be Bubble Blade Interweaver. All right, now talking about powers, there's like so many powers in this game, guys, that this is going to be more of like an advanced guide thing. I just released a video about power combos, so if you're looking for like some cool synergies between powers, I suggest like checking that out. It's literally just like the previous video on my channel from this one. But I think for Zeph, some cool ones to look to are any of these touch ones. So Touch of Life, as well as Touch of Speed, I think are both strong on Zeph because of the way your allies are like grouping around you a lot of times for this whoosh, and the way you're trying to stay around them a lot of the time to, you know, be in range for heals and stuff. I think he does get pretty good value out of the touch spells. Yeah, touch of mana as well, right? A really fun support one that I've been really enjoying is the turtle, and this is literally a Thresh Lantern. And so I think for any support or even like other characters that want to play, like lean a little more into the support playstyle, like rocking the turtle just gives your allies like the ability to reposition when they otherwise wouldn't be able to. So if like my friends over here see this timer ticking down on this circle, that's how long the turtle stays up. But I can go super far with this turtle, and my ally, as long as they take it before that timer runs up, they can just like wamp instantly to me. They'll just get pulled right to my location. And so like, especially combined with your own movement, like if you're doing a bunch of like the B-hop, you know, shift stuff, if you turtle out for a teammate and you're using all your movement to go crazy far, you know, your teammate can then, they're doing something over there, killing a creep camp. They can take that turtle and be right at this creep camp. You know, you can be like super efficient with the turtle, and especially just like lean more into like more of the support style of Zeph, right? Like really trying to bring your teammates to the fights, and kind of like that same idea you get out of your dash, you can use turtle in the same way. And then like we were talking about with the ability upgrades, if it is like a end game circle where there's going to be a lot of abyss around and you don't want to take your upgraded nade and you look for more of the cyclone dash, abyss specialist becomes incredibly strong, because so like if you can dash out over the abyss, but then you can like get back without dashing again, you have infinite dash with abyss specialist. So this is like a way to essentially like late game generate like crazy win ring gauntlets for, oh, I can see it looks like we have a max of 2. Do you see how those ones just despawned? So we can't do like a crazy amount, but we can get 4 win rings up, and abyss specialist is just like a way to kind of do that instantly while still maintaining our like regular dash charge. Last one I think worth pointing out on Zeph is Tree Prison, and this is basically because you can use it to set up a huge nade ult combo. So like imagine if an enemy team is running right here, and you're able to get a Tree Prison, and this is pretty long range, right? So imagine they're like running away and you get a good Tree Prison, that's gonna kind of put everyone in the exact radius of like your grenade size. And especially if you can like sneak an LMB before you Tree Prison, and so you have your mark on them, you can get your like Wombo, nade, ult, mega blast, and you can get that on like a whole team a lot of the times as they're all like panicking trying to break through these trees as you treat them in. It's just like some fun Zeph shenanigans. And boom, that is all we got for Zeph. I'm going to be continuing to do this with the other hunters. So far we've done Myth, Ghost, Shiv, Bishop, now Zeph, and I'm looking to do Jhin next, followed by everyone else. Also going to keep trying to fit in little mechanics guides for stuff that I think might be useful here and there. And hopefully going to be getting a little more into shoutcasting in these coming weeks. So again, I just want to thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you and all this early support you guys have been showing me. Remember to take care of yourself and keep vibing. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.